Well, it was more about escaping my body and going into other realities, not so much as an escape, more as a balm. And I was not trying to pass. I could pass because I was young and really pretty, but it was a big fuck you to the culture generally, because I wasn't sure who I was and what I wanted to be and what I wanted to show up as. So showing up as this culturally challenging siren was an especially fun thing to do, because I both learned in the process and I wound up being incredibly effective because I was gorgeous. And the response was kind of amazing to be that malleable with people and really put them off the kilter. It was fun. I'm not a narcissist, but I'm an adornment creature of adornment. I mean, I knew that I could pull off certain things and look certain ways, but I wasn't using it to get dates. I embody a lot of this. I embody my generation. I mean, what is edge anymore? What is extreme anymore? What is avant-garde anymore? For me, for us, Uptown was the enemy.
Hello and welcome to Artifacts, a living archive dedicated to preserving the first-person stories of queer, avant-garde, and underground culture, told by those who lived it. Today's episode is part of our series Downtown Performance, produced in collaboration with NYU Skirball, spotlighting the radical artists who reshaped New York's theatrical underground.
This episode features a 2021 interview with John Kelly, the amazingly protean actor, writer, choreographer, singer, and visual artist who resists easy categorization. After studying art and ballet, he began in his early 20s to embody iconic figures, ranging from the Austrian painter Egon Schiele to the mad visionary Antonin Artaud to the trans tightrope performer Barbette. Kelly gravitated to the lively happening East Village performance and club scene of the 1980s, and he regarded the legendary Pyramid Club as his home. The Pyramid also helped spawn RuPaul, Ethyl Eichelberger, Lady Bunny, and Taboo. Kelly's pieces centered on Joni Mitchell and the fictional Dagmar Onassis, combining lip-syncing and his exceptional vocal range. Over a long and ongoing career comprising more than 70 works, Kelly has addressed autobiographical and social themes, notably the AIDS crisis, and his honors include Obie Awards, Bessie Awards, and a Guggenheim Fellowship.
I was born and raised in Jersey City, Irish Catholic family. Childhood was fine and interesting and wonderful up until a certain point. I had an ability to draw, which I inherited from my father, who had that gift. There was a sense of destiny and mission, both because I had some abilities, primarily the visual art thing, but also because I knew there had to be more and other than what Jersey City was providing. We were struggling. We were, lower middle class family. My father worked for Transamerica as a safety engineer, but he had to get a night job because he had 5 kids. My grandmother lived upstairs. But it was a good childhood, loving. So I was always creating. I was melting crayons in the sun to make dishes for my sister's Barbie dolls. But within that, there were these things that my father wished for me to do, like play sports. He made a boxing thing for me that I could hit with boxing gloves, baseball outfit. So it was a real divide between what my impulses were and what the world was expecting of me as a young man. I didn't want to join Little League. It was boring. I mean, it was a different vibe that I didn't really care about, that rough and tumble, growly, competitive thing. I had higher aspirations. Exposure to things like the Ed Sullivan Show on TV, where I was exposed to opera and ballet and, culture. Being exposed to a lot of wonderful music and certain kind of culture, which is now it's ubiquitous in social media and on cable TV, but then on regular TV it was really relegated to the Ed Sullivan Show and the occasional odd thing they would show on Channel 11, WPIX. So there were glimpses of another world, of a bigger world, a more interesting world, that gave me a sense of ultimate destination and private refuge, knowing that I was going to be an artist. We had a bunch of 78 records in the basement, and I remember putting on Jane Russell singing the Italian street song and dancing around and lip-syncing to it. I was getting dressed up in crazy stuff. Halloween, I cut a football in half one year and made a brassiere out of it. And that was a real statement for me because I knew exactly what I was doing. I think I wore it under a gypsy outfit or something. But I was literally taking this thing that I was being kind of forced into. My father wished for me to play sports. I transformed into something other. And also, in the doing of that, I was also doing a critique on what was expected of women to have these pointed brassieres in the 60s. It was just ridiculous. My mother thought it was hilarious, and she brought me in and showed my father, and he thought it was pretty funny too. So, you know, there was a blessing on with the surprising, you know, gestures of a boy. I had a best friend, and we used to go on the PATH train to New York, and we'd wander around the East Village. This was when we were in high school, just to be part of what we knew was a genuine counterculture. And also there were field trips in high school to the Museum of Contemporary Crafts, MoMA, the Met, to see the performance group, the precursor to the Worcester group, Richard Schechner, do a production of Macbeth at the Garage. And we sat at the banquet table. It was a production where the spectators were in with the performers. It was staggeringly thrilling to be in that milieu of the genuine avant-garde. An older kid from high school brought us to the Anderson Theater to see the Cockettes perform after their opening night in 1971, and that completely changed my life. They did a production called Pearls Over Shanghai, with a guy painted gold nude with a big gong. They showed Trisha's Wedding, the film, at intermission. At Act 2 began with a man dancing the Dying Swan, and who it was Larry Ray, the founder of the original Trocadero Gloxinia Ballet Company, dancing the Dying Swan, who I eventually worked with. All these things were circling and converging and bestowing their blessing on me and my friend, and ushering me into this knowledge that there was a path into a world of magic, of irreverence, of truly personal and epic exploration. I wanted to be a prince, so I got myself in the place where they make princes. Right out of high school, I got a scholarship at American Ballet Theater School. And I'd had very little training. As I said, I'd been studying with Zina Ramette before that. I was also going to please my parents. I was going to New Jersey State College to study art. I was also dancing with the modern dance pioneer Charles Weidman at his expression of Two Arts Theater, which was on 28th Street, I think, by 6th Avenue. With ballet, one needs the obvious physical gifts in spades in order to actually even make it function properly. The geometry of the body, all that. I went from a dearth of both training and culture into the epicenter of the dance boom of the 1970s. What ballet was a grounding for that type of possibility of spectacle performance, of embodying character. But it was really too late. I was already this tall, my hips were not really going to turn out. In terms of being the danseur noble, you know, the prince, it was just not going to happen really. So I just walked out of Harkness one day. I was like, fuck this. I sat in a park the first day of the new semester, whatever, at Harkness. I just couldn't even go in the building. I just sat in the park. I was frozen. I was living in the East Village, painting, drawing, doing a lot of self-portraits, painting in the mirror, scrutinizing oneself. Once again, the mirror became my companion. I discovered the work of the Viennese expressionist painter Egon Schiele, and that is what introduced me to the self-portrait, to go through that portal of exploring your own guise, you know, whether it's an artificial pose or just as is. The Anvil was this club on West 14th Street. You know that triangle? But that's where the Anvil was, in the basement. So I would go there and I would sketch. I'd sit above the staircase and sketch the crowd. It was men. It was like a benevolent Weimar purgatory on your way to heaven. Like you're walking into an Otto Dix painting or something, you know. And there was this giant oval bar, dancers dancing on the bar. There was a huge high stage platform. They snuck Lee Radziwill in one night, dressed as a boy. The place had sawdust on the floor, so if I would get there early and dance in the sawdust and draw on the floor. And I had 4 queens behind me rowing a stick with cigarettes in their mouths, because Carmen worked in a cigarette factory. And I'm lip-syncing and gesturing and, you know, really ran the array from like Shirley Bassey lip-sync to performers like Ruby Rims, the amazing Yuba, Miss 3D from Australia, to fire dancers and guys in, you know, chaps doing lassos in jock straps and all that. And then I did see Tanya Ransom perform. Tanya Ransom, his real name was Michael Norman, who was lip-syncing Nina Hagen. It blew me away. I became friends with Michael. Biggest thing for me was that I realized I really wanted to be back on stage, and going back on stage in this kind of gender-fucked persona. Torn stockings, eye sockety makeup, teased out red hair, a torn slip, long gloves, and of course red lips, and looking gorgeous, you know, white skin, all that, whatever. I've arrived at something, I don't know what, but I've arrived.
In fights. Are you hungry, dear? Yuki? Hi, Tanya. Half a dozen California rolls? 5 minutes, thanks.
Lip-syncing has been ubiquitous forever in the drag performance scene, going way back. You get done up, but then what are you going to do? Who can you show up as? Maria Callas. She became really my first major inspiration. One night I was in my apartment in the East Village. I was tripping on acid, and I'm sitting on the floor, and there's a mirror, and I put her rendition of the J'ai perdu mon Eurydice, the big aria from Orpheus and Eurydice by Gluck. The sound of her voice and her artistry just went through me. I lip-synced it, and I mesmerized myself because I did it so effectively. So that's really what I knew, that I could do that in front of people on stage, lip-syncing. Tanya organized a new wave night at the Anvil, which was on a Monday night. I made my debut at that first new wave night. I lip-synced Maria Callas's rendition of the Habanera from Georges Bizet's opera Carmen. That night at the Anvil was really the beginning of my career. I basically went from painting on 2D to painting myself as a 3D object. There was an urgency there that felt right in 1979, 1980. I started making these 5-minute pieces, 10-minute pieces. I started using film in my work, Super 8 film projections and slide projections. My good friend, the photographer John Dugdale. Then I eventually started working with the filmmaker Anthony Chase, and we would do film sequences that would coexist with live performance. Because I'd worked with the playwright John Jesurun in his weekly serialized soap opera called Chang in a Void Moon, in which I played the son Picablo. But John was doing those weekly performances earlier in the evening on Monday nights. It was very smart, Monday night, whatever. But it was then no longer a club, it was a theater space for us. So I was using that to develop these longer pieces, which became multimedia with film projection and all that. And in that there was also some drag, but it began more like male drag, like vintage characters, like I said, St. Sebastian, Narcissus. There was some lip-syncing in them, but not much. It was really movement. But on the audio track, I would put sometimes narration. I was doing music collages. So the music and sound effect became the backbone of my performance works. It gave me a trajectory, a solid backbone to embody, and more information, another layer of information for the audience. Performing them in clubs like Cafe Schmidt down on Broome Street, the Mud Club, Folk City, Club 57, but then eventually the Pyramid Cocktail Lounge, which opened in December of 1981. And
the Pyramid Cocktail Lounge, interviewing some of the thousands of fans who've come to see Dagmar Onassis. What do you think is so great about her?
Well, she's the only star in opera today who has real glamour. She's a great star and a great actress.
Yes, but what do you really love about her?
And that became my home and my lab. 101 Avenue A and Avenue A between 6th and 7th Street. It was gay, it was straight, it was punk, it was rock and roll, it was drag, it was everything.
Really good because you have all the drag queens and you have all the skinheads together. And it's really cool because a couple of years ago, everyone used to fight. You know, it's not like that anymore. Everyone's together having fun.
It was very Dada. And there was a core group of performers that helped to put it on the map. Stephen Tajin, otherwise known as Taboo, Happy Face came in, Happy was great. Brian Butterick, who was there early on, he had been a former doorman at the Mud Club, and he was also in the band Three Teens Kill Four with David Wojnarowicz. And Craig, she was the MC for Cafe Iguana, which is a Sunday night event. Kęstutis Naukas, who used to show plays there. A few years later, Lady Bunny and RuPaul came up from the South and brought with it a maybe more traditional drag aesthetic. It was very irreverent, but it wasn't trying to please the audience, and it was trying to reinvent genre. It was really basically artists fucking around. So the Pyramid wound up serving many purposes for many of us. It was great. It was a place to party. It was a lab. It was a theater space. It was a club space to do club performance. The scene was burgeoning scene, and my career was just starting. It was it was the only place I really felt at home. This was, in retrospect, the last gasp of genuine bohemian turf in New York. But like anything, once it gets glory, it dies. When limousines started showing up, people from uptown coming down, people heard about this place and they would come. I mean, when it was written up in the Times, all these weird Wall Street people started showing up at the door. It was very weird. It was like, what are you? But they'd bring their money in. But still, it was like they came to gawk, See the drag queens dancing on the bar, whatever. We can play that game.
I think the people here are fabulous, except those, tort-faced yuppies. They're rather disgusting. I can do without them, and so can the bar staff.
Biff and Brad hit the Lower East Side. They heard the neighborhood was gentrified. They found safety and sushi on Avenue A, so they bought a little loft and decided to stay. They said, the East Village is where it's at. They got into the Pyramid for only $5.
I lost my first, Bill Schwedler, who was my mentor and friend. We'd go to the Anvil. He died in November of 1982. I mean, they had just named it AIDS. Before that, it was Grid or something, I did a performance at the Pyramid Club. It was really a eulogy. It was to this very kind of sad, orchestral music. I called it Life Without Grace. And I did that because Grace Kelly had just died, right? So I did it as kind of a lure to get people in there. And I did this giant seamless painting, a seamless paper portrait of two of our heads in black and white paint, like grisé, gray, shades of gray. And that was my way of one way of processing it. I mean, he had been going through spinal they didn't even know what it was. It was just awful. It's like World War I with a generation wiped out. People that were already famous, people that were on the cusp of success and fame and worthy celebrity, and people that were brilliant and we don't even know about now. I embody a lot of this. I embody my generation. I was diagnosed as HIV positive in 1989. I've been dealing with this thing my whole adult life. During my career, I live it, right? And I'm a survivor. And but I'm up against a Sisyphean hill struggle of how do you get people to understand the importance of connecting the dots between generations. It's like this trifecta of disaster, gentrification, AIDS, digital technology, all working against a generation's voice. I kept working though, I kept making these performance pieces. I was realizing that I liked playing characters. I liked transforming myself completely. I was a chameleon. At that point, my face was a blank slate. I could make myself look like anything, and I was also, in that way, being a visual artist. When it is a character that's existed, like Maria Callas or Egon Schiele or Joni Mitchell, I'm finding this parallel track where I can kind of identify their DNA and their shapes and jump into these shapes and find my own way of enlivening what I perceive to be their DNA and then presenting that. Out of lip syncing, I started singing because I realized I had a high voice, mimicking Callas. That's what I was doing, but I was discovering this high register, a falsetto, in my voice, and I knew I wanted to sing, and I started singing in performances, maybe a little bit here, a little bit there, at the Pyramid Cocktail Lounge. And then when the queens at the Pyramid decided to do the first Wigstock Festival, and obviously Wigstock is a riff on Woodstock, and Joni Mitchell wrote the definitive Woodstock anthem named Woodstock, even though she wasn't at Woodstock. I said, well, that's what I have to do. I have to finally sing Joni Mitchell singing Woodstock, but now as Wigstock. I discovered Joni Mitchell with my sisters when I was a kid. And that music, that poetry, that wanderlust, that lyricism, the piano, the journeys she was on, that kind of got into my soul at a young age. And then out of lip syncing, I started singing. Eventually, after I did the gig quite a bit, I said I've got to pick up the guitar again after 15 years of not playing and start to play her open tunings and all that. So that became another layer of this Joni Mitchell opus that I did for years on and off, learning her open tunings. And then when I finally did the show for Joni Mitchell, she was weeping, applauding, bravoing. She got it. She gave me a dulcimer. So I said, well, now I've got to learn some songs on the dulcimer. So I did that. So for me, this show was a huge technical challenge on many levels. Musically, I'm dealing with the voice, the 3 octaves of her singing from early songs to later songs, right? Her voice kept getting lower and lower. I'm dealing with the guitar, the open tunings, the dulcimer. Then there's the character, the visual, the drag aspect, what you're wearing, how you're showing up, how it's registering, and then what is the body language? And then what is the banter? And the banter between songs was her actual words culled from interviews, from articles that I fashioned into in-between song banter. So this 2-hour show with like 18 songs became this, huge technical challenge, but it registered, I'm hoping, as an experience. And once again, I was identifying what I perceived to be her DNA, her visuals, and how can I embody that? How can I embody those shapes visually, with sound, and with energy? My fingers are still pretty raw, and it's a new song for me. But, the voice is a muscle, and if you don't use it, it gets rusty, so I'm a little, Does now seem worth all the color of skies to see the earth through painted eyes, to look through panes of shaded glass, see the stains of winter's grass. Can you now return to from where you came? Try to burn your changing name, or with silver spoons and colored light will you worship moons in winter's night? Clouds of sand have covered your face, given you meaning, but taken my place. So make your way on down to the sea. Something has taken you so far from me. You know, as a performer getting older, it's in a way, it's like, what can I get away with now? Because, you know, the blank slate is no longer, there's character in the blank slate. I'm not sure where I fit in the cultural scenario. I will continue to make work, I'll continue to sing, continue to make visual art, but I don't know what the next piece will be if I do another dance theater or performance work. Usually a light goes on for me and the destination becomes clear.
Artifacts is a free oral histories platform. Please like, subscribe, and visit our website, www.artifacts.movie, for an ad-free, interactive experience with bonus content. If you're able, please make a tax-deductible donation at www.artifacts.movie/donate. Hit the link on screen to watch another Artifacts interview.